the politicians that are excellent communicators are the ones that meet the moment where it's at. When we have order, we'd like to create chaos, and when we have chaos, we'd like to create order. So the best politicians are the ones that recognize what is the state of the nation that we're currently in right now, and what is it that the nation are hungry for, and how do I personify that in the way that I orate? The worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the moment where you're saying it. You cannot write, perform, and edit at the same time. If you are looking to be able to get a team aligned, it's acceptance, ownership, responsibility. I've actually learned that we do agree on more than we disagree on, most of the time. But that doesn't push headlines, that doesn't drive content, that doesn't move money. We live in a world, if you follow the money, you find the truth. If you are to win in life, whatever winning means to you, you do need to be a bit of a dreamer. There was a period of time in my life where I was going through a tremendous set of challenges. I was stretched and hustling and trying to keep all the wheels on, and started to have almost like a anxiety, panic attack in my chest. I was driving in the UK and I needed to pull over. A poem that just entered into my head, and I pulled out my journal and I wrote it out word for word. But I finished that poem with the words that success is all my fault. And it was really a defining moment in my life to just take full personal responsibility to say that anything and everything that happens is down to me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Changing Minds podcast. I'm Owen Fitzpatrick, and today I'm joined with not only a good friend of mine, but someone who has been enormously helpful for me over the last few years. Phil M. Jones is the author of Exactly What to Say. I've done an episode before a few weeks ago on his books, especially Exactly What to Say itself. Phenomenal book with lots of really great insights about exactly how you can be more effective at persuading people and influencing people, obviously in an ethical way, but how you can be better at sales and marketing, a whole host of other things as well. So check out that episode. But Phil is someone who's not only, from my perspective, an expert in sales, he's also a phenomenal ability to come up with and generate business ideas, a marketing mind like you've never heard of before. So in this episode, I want to get into some of the things that are most important to Phil. We want to dive into, as we always do, his beliefs, his thinking, his mindsets, and also some of the ways in which he thinks about business, the way he thinks about life, to be able to benefit all of us. This is going to be a killer of an episode. Phil, mate, great to have you on.
Good to be here. Thanks for building this up like it's going to be something awesome. Now there's no pressure, right?
No, absolutely not. No. But I know it is going to be. And we're both in New York. You've been here a number of years. You've built incredible businesses. And I've learned a lot from you. A lot of the work you do is exactly what to say for all sorts of salespeople, from real estate right the way through to multiple industries. When it comes to politics, we're starting with the easy question, Phil. So what are the things that people, if you're in politics, can do better with words to be able to make them more likely to get elected?
I think sometimes people forget who they're talking to. You know, all of us have read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. To me, sometimes it's about start with who. Like, who are the people that you're looking to be able to influence? And thinking about politics or thinking about just growing your business is the most important group for you to be able to communicate to is all the people stuck in maybe. See, what you have with the people who are stuck in maybe is they're indecisive. Indecision is often the enemy of change. It's people procrastinating. It's people spinning on the spot. So if I'm in a political leadership position right now, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to do two things. One is to help create order amongst the chaos of those individuals that are indecisive. And two is to build my army of ambassadors that are going to talk into the life of the person who's indecisive. So if I can pull from one far side of a belief system and I can help somebody find order amongst chaos of what's in their existing maybe pile, chances are their order will then lean in the direction of where the cheerleaders are pulling them towards. That's the game that I'd be playing when it comes to communication, is recognizing that there are people in maybe, and these are the unanswered questions they have, then empowering the people who already have the loudest microphones to then provide further evidence that the answers to those questions are this way or this way.
And so with that in mind, someone once told me that there's really two ways that you politically communicate. One is you're trying to influence people to vote for you.
Of course.
But the other one is you want to mobilize the people that are already on your side to actually go out and take
Correct.
the action. So politicians are always speaking to those two audiences. I know Ronald Reagan has this famous speech where he was speaking to like 5 or 6 audiences at the same time.
Yeah.
From your perspective, how do you navigate that?
My thought process about this would be no different than how you approach a speech. if you are delivering a speech to an audience of 6,500 people, that is not an audience of 6,500 people. That's 6,500 individual people. And what you can start to look to be able to do is to understand who are those groups of people. What's interesting in a speech environment, particularly at a lot of big events of those scales, is those people are actually categorized within the audience. Like you've got the block of the exec C-suite. You've got the long-term, long-established VIP, high-paying people at the event. You've got potential new customers of that organization that are, held out somewhere saying, look what you could get if you're in the inner circle. You've got, other user groups that are just part of the mass, part of the tribe. And most big audiences have at least 4, 5, 6, 7 subcategories of tribes or clans, etc. within them. So what you have to do firstly is to recognize that. And once you've recognized that, take the objective of saying, how do I hit the show me that you know me button to every one of those people at least a couple of times in whatever time period that you have that's available. And that could be as simple as saying, well, what smart aspirational leaders are thinking right now. Like I'd be labeling groups of people. I'd be saying, look, there's somebody in this room right now that is questionable. They're wondering if they're in the right place with the right group of people. You see, every time I label one of these groups of people, somebody goes, ding, that's me. Therefore, that's for me. This message is for me because I feel seen. So I would be deliberately and purposefully identifying the groups of people that I would like to have realization that this speech is for them. And I'd build a cocktail that mentions all those points.
Brilliant. One of the questions I've asked you before is speakers that you've seen that you think are, some of the best speakers out there. And we've mainly talked about professional speakers.
Sure.
When you look at politicians, and again, over the last 50 years, let's say, are there specific politicians that you see as being wonderful speakers that you can extract from your lens, from the way you think individually and uniquely about the world, that you go, this politician was a great speaker because of X, Y, and Z? Mm-hmm. Is there specific politicians that stand out?
Well, I think when you look at the state of the world at any good period of time, the politicians that are excellent communicators are the ones that meet the moment where it's at. I think the speaking journey that Barack Obama went on through his early years through to where he then finished his tenure as the president of the United States showed a huge evolution in his ability to be able to orate from a platform. Like that is a growth trajectory that is worthy of watching for anybody. But the reason that I feel like that was so wonderful is because he created order amongst chaos. And actually his speaking style and his methodology was creating order amongst chaos. We have other politicians in more recent years that have created chaos within order. And that's the way that the world lives, is when we have order, we'd like to create chaos. And when we have chaos, we'd like to create order.
Sure.
So the best politicians are the ones that recognize what is the state of the nation that we're currently in right now, and what is it that the nation are hungry for, and how do I personify that in the way that I orate? So if people are angry and mad and frustrated, they want to hear from somebody in their leadership position that is angry and mad and frustrated and thinks the world could be a different place. Mm-hmm. If people are chaotic and confused and wondering where to look and where to turn and who to trust, what they're looking for is calm and reassured and something that is well thought through. So it's less about like the quality of the speech. It's about where the speech meets the moment. And we teach something in our certification programs around exactly what to say, that the worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the moment where you're saying it. If anybody's ever seen me deliver a keynote speech, I deliver that like it's a joke. It's definitely not a joke. And the most important word in that is the word moment. People think that we're trying to master communication. We're trying to master our ability to speak or orate. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be looking to master the moment. How many times have you delivered the right speech at the wrong time? How many times have you found what it is that you felt like you wanted to be communicating to somebody, but the moment's already passed? If you can add more intentionality to say, what is the moment that I'm in service of? There's a strong possibility that the skill, the cadence, the energy, the enthusiasm that's required for that moment will be a lot more natural to pick, because you're not playing from here or even here. You're playing from out here, like what's happening right here in front of me. And there's something that was shared with me early in my career that is, you cannot write, perform, and edit at the same time. You cannot write, perform, and edit at the same time. Yet many of us in life are trying to write, perform, and edit at the same time. And I'll prove that you cannot write, perform, and edit at the same time. Because you cannot read, watch, and listen at the same time. So if we put those into opposites, like, can you read a book whilst watching a movie, whilst listening to your spouse talking to you? You actually do all three of those things badly, i.e. you do none of them.
Mm-hmm.
You can just about do two, but mostly we need to monotask on one of those things if we're looking to be able to excel on it.
Sure.
And that means that to master moments in a speaking point of view, political or any other point in time, you might have to write something ahead of time, knowing the moment it is that you're writing for. You then have to put a huge amount of emotional intelligence into how do you meet that moment in your performance. And you have to be humble enough to say that you're going to sit down and review this at a later date and look at what you could have done better and what worked well so you can get better and better again for next time. Those same rules are going to apply for everybody.
I love that answer. When it comes to something closer to our homes, which is Thanksgiving dinner or conversations with family, when a family member is a very different point of view, one of the things that I think a lot of people that know of your work don't realize just how much value that you actually bring to the table when it comes to having difficult conversations. So what are some suggestions for you? Let's imagine you have two people, you've got like dinner table, because sometimes in America it's like, let's not talk about politics. Let's just ignore it. And I really genuinely feel that that's not healthy. Now, fighting about it and hating each other afterwards is obviously not. What would be your advice or suggestions based upon your expertise that would help people to have better conversations together at the dinner table over Thanksgiving, for example?
Here's the cleanest piece of advice I can give in this entire conversation, is give zero advice. That would be the starting point coming into these conversations. Give zero advice. Do not try and convince anybody of your opinion. Do not try and tell anybody that they're wrong and all the reasons why what they're thinking is stupid on either side. Be curious. Understand that you might not be right. The safest place to go into any negotiation is neutral. Safest place. If you go in with a predetermined idea that the other person is an idiot, they're wrong, what they believe is stupid, then you will carry all that venom into the conversation. And if you are looking to influence other people, you first have to understand that you are open to influence yourself. You might not be right. So the starting point that I would look at Thanksgiving dinner is if there's somebody has opposing beliefs to you about anything, explore the foundation of where that belief is born. And a belief in my mind is merely a thought you agree with. That's what a belief is. It's a thought that you agree with. And they're probably agreeing with that thought for good reason. In their own mind, in their own learned experience, in their own lived experiences. They've got good reason to believe what they believe. So don't question the belief, question where they're getting their reasoning from. So I'd ask questions that would say, well, what do you understand about what's really happening with blank? Or what do you understand about how other people are seeing this from an alternative perspective? What do you understand what might potentially possibly happen if? But you see how there's a space in all of these questions to allow somebody to have to further explain themselves, further justify themselves. If somebody has a incorrect belief, when they have to try and sell that belief to others, and they realize it's based on insufficient data, they then become more impressionable. What you can then look to be able to do is to build a series of questions on this and stay curious for a long period of time. We teach this again in our certification programs. I might go from a what do you understand question to a what is your experience question. Like, people have really strong beliefs around, say, something like gun control. Let's just go right there and go to gun control. My best friend and I have very different beliefs on gun control. My best friend David lives in Nashville, or on the outskirts of Nashville in Tennessee. He's grown up out in the country. He very, very strongly has guns as part of his life. Like, I think it came to him very early as a gift. It's like, let's go shooting with Papa. Like, this is part of culture in his world. And for a long period of time, I thought he was a freaking idiot on this belief. But it wasn't until we had a meaningful conversation where I asked him questions like, well, what do you understand about the way we operate with guns in the United Kingdom that is different to what it is in the South, in the US? He says, not much. I say, well, what is your experience of being in a crowded environment like New York City and giving consideration that just about anybody could be carrying a weapon. He's like, not much. I'm like, well, when was the last time that you felt scared in your home environment? He said, well, not so much me being scared at my home environment, but there was a time recently where I was away on a business trip and my wife and kids were home alone, and somebody was traveling down the driveway with the lights on late at night, and I got a call from my wife and I felt scared for my family. I'm like, whoa, this is different and interesting. I could ask, or he could ask me, is like, how certain are you that if you were in that scenario that you wouldn't want your family to be able to protect themselves? I'm like, I'm thinking a little differently here. And could it be possible that if you were in my shoes that you might want to have some form of means of being able to warn somebody away, protect yourself if something got shirty? Or I'm like, maybe. And the result of this conversation back and forth over a period of time is we actually realized that we agreed. David thinks guns are a good idea because he wants to keep his family safe. I think guns are not such a good idea because I'd like to keep my family safe. So what can we then have is we can have remarkable conversations about the ways in which we can evolve to keep our family safe. So what I'd be looking to do in the Thanksgiving conversations is to explore what the other person believes and the foundation of that belief and the why behind the what. Allow them the space to be able to do the same with you, and see if what you can do is find a what that you agree on. And then talk about the ways in which that what could be achieved differently. Talk about why that matters so much and find the shared belief and water that one, as opposed to try and argue the opposing beliefs and watch how much change you can create.
What I love about that answer is it's having that sort of respectful approach that I'm right, I'm in neutral and I'm trying to understand you.
Correct.
And you're in neutral and you're trying to understand me. And that mindset carries it through. But then also, it reminds me of this model, as I'm sure you know, in negotiation, called the PIN model, positions, interests, needs. And the idea is we might have vastly different positions. One person might believe in gun control, the other person's against it. But when you actually uncover that and you ask the questions that you suggested, what do you know about this? Or what is your experience with this? The more you do that, the more you go towards the interests and needs. And what you and your friend found was actually we have very, very similar needs, but we've different positions. But allows you then to focus more on what you have in common as opposed to what you
Bingo.
love it.
Bingo. And the challenge that we have with this is that the modern Western world moves at the speed of chaos again, right? So we have so many opposing forces that are saying, well, let's fight right and wrong in as many ways as humanly possible. And I'm fortunate enough now to have worked in nearly all 50 of the states here in the US. I've met literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of different people, and I've actually learned that we do agree on more than we disagree on most of the time. But that doesn't push headlines. That doesn't drive content. That doesn't move money. And we live in a world, if you follow the money, you find the truth. So I think sometimes just even understanding that allows you to say, well, actually, which role am I playing in this? Am I a pawn in a bigger game, or am I a free thinker? Am I part of the problem or the solution? And I think we can be all of those things at any given time. Like, it's not a role that you play in its entirety. We all play all of those roles at different points in time. But being aware of the fact that your beliefs can be fluid, your beliefs can change. And if you want to change other people's beliefs, you have to be prepared to change yours. It opens up a whole world of possibility.
With the business world, what advice or suggestions or strategies would you offer people that are working with other members of a team that have competing priorities to you? So I'm in compliance, so I got to make sure everything is like by the book. You're in innovation, so you got to make sure that you're coming up with new ideas and taking risks. Someone else is it. So you've got a multitude of different people all trying to ultimately get to the bottom line, which is increase shareholder value, right?
Yeah.
But in order to do that, how would you help people internally in teams to negotiate better with each other?
It's hard to navigate priorities when you don't have one overarching North Star. Any given team, like if you use a sports team for an example, if you do not understand in a game of soccer that the primary objective is to win the game in this 90-minute window that we have made available to us, to defeat the opposition based on having a higher level of tenacity or skill set, etc., to be able to achieve it, and to do it regardless of external conditions, it doesn't matter how that team communicates because they're all trying to win at a different game. The first thing I'd look to be able to find agreement on is what is the North Star that all of us understand that we're a part of. In many organizations, people think that their world is the world. And this isn't just in organizations, this is in industries. I do a lot of work inside the real estate space, and the real estate space gets like some form of external challenges and constraints, and they have to change the way they're working. And there's a big upheaval that's happening right now, end of 2024, where people are like, it's not fair, it shouldn't be this way, and why is the world against me? And they're not. The world is not against an industry. The world is just going through perpetual amounts of change, and you are on the receiving end of a significant change at this period of time. What do you have to get to agree on before you can make progress is that it's not about you. In fact, what you are in service of is a consumer, and helping consumers achieve more meaningful outcomes is the thing that everybody should be in agreement towards. But it's not the thing that everybody is focused on being able to work on right now. They're saying it's not fair. What about me? Why can't it be easier? So they're in complaint mode. You've heard like about drawing a line, right? You can have blame, excuse, denial down one side. You can have acceptance, responsibility, and ownership down the other side. Most people want to play on that side of the line. It's not my fault. It's their fault instead. And it's because of. Instead of saying, I get it, it's hard, I have skills and resources to be able to help navigate this, and I believe that I have the ability to be able to work towards a better future. So if you are looking to be able to get a team aligned, it's acceptance, ownership, responsibility. Acceptance, ownership, responsibility. How do they get to be able to accept the role that they have to play on the team, to take ownership of what's inside their control and not be looking at what other people are up to, and then take responsibility to deliver upon the promises that they make to other people, and then expect the same of others? But it needs a North Star. And then it needs you to be able to get into the conversations around. We could use a similar kind of framework we talked about earlier as the Thanksgiving table. We could say, well, what do you understand about everything that I have on my plate right now to be able to help achieve X? What are they going to say? They're going to say not much. If you work for compliance and they work for marketing, you could say, well, what is your experience of finding yourself in a courtroom being sued because somebody didn't use the right form for the right job? They're going to say not much. You're going to say, well, when was the last time that you had to sign off on something where there was this much financial responsibility towards the company? They say, I haven't. You go, well, how certain are you that my priorities aren't the most important priorities? They say, well, I was kind of sure a minute ago, but not so sure right now. And you keep building out a series of questions. But then the same guy in the marketing department could say, well, what do you understand about how challenging it is to be able to help us, protect and grow market share when we're being attacked by competition in every angle? They say, not much. You say, well, what is your experience of just how much we need to get out in the world if we're going to keep mind share of not only our new customers, but our existing customers too? It's not much. You say, well, how important is it to you that we actually keep our existing customers and we grow our business? This is pretty darn important.
Yeah.
You say, well, when was the last time that you had to stand in front of a team full of people and tell them what they needed to do to be able to keep their jobs and invite them to think outside the box and be creative to be able to deliver results and have them to believe in your message so that they can deliver it with excellence? He says, nope, I sit behind a computer and we work on legal papers.
What's great about this as well, Phil, is it's almost like creating empathy in the other person through questions.
Correct.
So you're asking questions, but effectively what you're doing is you're getting them to see it from your point of view. Mm-hmm. Whereas what our natural tendency is the opposite to that. It's, Phil, let me tell you why you're wrong and why I'm right. And Phil at that stage is already like shut off because it's, as you put it, it's one against the other. It's almost like we're playing a different game. I'm playing a game to win, as opposed to what you're suggesting is you're playing a game to really win, for both of you to win.
We've been trained to believe that negotiation, influence, persuasion, sales, etc., are all games that you are looking to be able to run towards a finish line with a winner and a loser. I won the sale, I won the deal, I won the argument, I won the fight, I won the business, I won the debate, I won. Therefore, if you're the winner, the other person must be the loser.
Sure, yeah.
And what it results in is you might win the argument, but you don't win the game. If you want to win the game, you need to learn how to collaborate. Because you can't win anything by yourself. You have to take other people with you. So it shouldn't be about being right or wrong. You should work towards the right result. That's a completely different belief. Don't look to be able to be right. Learn to work towards the right result. And if you realize that you might need the input of the other person, if you realize that they possibly have an appreciating value that could be added towards your circumstances, you realize if nothing else, the least I need them to do is to stay out of my way, then you might operate a little slower in your conversations with somebody. And I've learned that if you slow the process down, you can speed the outcome up. Because what do people want? They want to feel seen and heard and understood. But they also want to believe that you believe that they and their role is important. If you disrespect they and their role, if you try to fight your importance versus their importance, you'll remain in conflict. And conflict will create tension, and that tension will slow you down. Period. So remove tension, create momentum, build an army of supporters with the wind at each other's back, and this comes from understanding. And the empathetic viewpoint starts with you saying, I don't know enough, so teach me.
The stuff that we're talking about now in today's world is so important, right? If more people, whether it's relationships, whether it's your family, whether it's, like we said, political differences, whether it's business, I mean, part of it's about having a North Star that both of you are looking at, as opposed to your own individual North Star, which is victory at all costs.
Right.
So you know what I mean? It's like and if you try to manage a relationship with victory at all costs, forget about it.
Right.
One of your, so we talk about language, we talk about exactly what to say. So obviously you're a Hall of Fame speaker, you've got a massive amount of accolades, but one of your superpowers in my mind is your business brain, right? I was saying it to Mike in the car on the way here, that where I know you started very ridiculously young. You're like one of these, like you come out of the womb and you're like naturally, like you're probably wheeling the deal in when you were like a toddler. So what was one of the early businesses that you set up, and what influenced you to have that philosophy of a business that led you to be the business person you are today?
Oh, man. I'm desperately trying to not give my car wash business story, because if anybody's heard me in an interview before, I've probably shared the car wash business story that I started when I was 14. So I'm gonna go back a little further, and then I'm gonna bounce forward just a few months after that.
Right.
And if I go back a little further, and I don't know whether I should put this on the record or not, I was very fortunate in the fact that my mum loved me and cared about us so much that she gave us a packed lunch to take to school that she made with her own fair hands every morning for us to take to high school. And I really wanted to have a cafeteria lunch. So what I learned is there are a number of kids that would have loved to have had a hand-prepared, mama-made lunchbox full of things. So what did I do is I learned to sell my lunch every day, so that what I could do is go buy my own hot dinner.
Does your mum know this, by the way?
I don't know if she knows it as cleanly as I'm putting it out here at this moment in time. She knows I may have done it once. I don't know if she knows how often that was my routine. And I had a little book of customers that I could lean on to see who wanted today's lunch. And I think there might have been points in time where she was like, why is Phil asking for that? I didn't think he liked that. And it's because I was taking orders.
You were taking orders. Oh my goodness, that's mad.
So there's a real early days of like, hey, how do you make something out of something, right? And chances are you can. And what it comes down to, though, is it comes down to solving other people's problems. So when I was 15, 16, etc., is I wanted to find ways to make more money. And I had my car cleaning business that was a hustle-based business. This was knocking on doors and cleaning people's cars and they're having kids in the year below. But there were other things that were problems in our world back in the UK. Is one was there wasn't many good things that young people could do that would experience as a night out in some way, shape or form. Like they didn't have places to go where they felt like that they were getting the kind of entertainment they were looking for, particularly in that sort of 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 age range before they were 18 and that they could be allowed to be able to get into nightclubs and bars and things, etc. And what I realized is most of our regional adult establishments only open Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. So I approached the owners of some of these nightclubs that we were waiting to be old enough to get into, and some people, I don't know who, certainly not me, were manipulating identifications in ways to find ways to be able to prove that they were entitled to get through the door. Is I approached these establishments and said, hey, like what would it take for you to be able to open the doors on a Tuesday? And this is like, why? What have you got in mind? And we went back and forward on this for a little. And we came to an agreement that said, if you could get X number of pounds and we get to keep the bar and it's nothing but soft drinks, we'll trial it and we'll open it once. Now, the number they were looking for was not that big of a number in the grand scheme of things to open the door. So what did I start doing is I started selling tickets to an event that we had no DJs for and no actual cadence and game plan. And we started to do Tuesday night party nights in a nightclub for 14 to 18-year-olds. And what happened is staff got extra hours in the nightclub business and the owners got a bar rake and, got their energy costs covered for that day. And I got to make the margin in between from the ticket sales that we sold.
Well.
And I think that's how I think about business. It's where does somebody else have a puzzle and there's a group of people who have an immediate need. And my value is the ability to be able to join those two gaps together. And we were talking about it even today is, I've recently partnered and acquired in a media company that produce videos for speakers, etc. And I'm not going to record any videos. What is the value that I provide? Well, I can provide an organization of what the offering is because of my deep knowledge of who the people are that this offering is looking to be provided for. Plus, I can introduce people to the service that's then being created, and my value is appreciated in that gap that sits between somebody's good at a thing and there are people that want that thing, but I'm a translator. That's where my value is I'm a lingua franca between people who are good at a thing and people that want the thing, and I find a way of being able to communicate it in the middle of those two things so both people get what they want, and then I get paid for it.
But you also, for example, you also bring to the table your knowledge in that particular business of the speaking business. You know the audience, you know the industry, you know what the management or the agencies want, But
that's the lesson for everybody, right? Is if you can elegantly matchmake between two user groups full of people that you have enough emotional understanding with, that is a highly valuable skill set. It's the same reason that agents and managers and producers in sports and the arts, etc., get rewarded at a high level. I mean, there are agents in the worlds of sports that make more money than many of the players, and they are the least athletic people in the planet. They also have no idea how to run a sports club. But what they know how to do is they know how to be able to find a set of terms that will work for two people who have fairly high egos. And the ability to be able to create a story for that person that says, I want to go that way, and a story for that person that means that you want to pay them that is a highly valuable skill set. Mm-hmm. And that's how I think about business, is how do you be the interpreter between two stakeholders or more so that what can be done is that the value appreciates on both sides and 2 + 2 = 5. There's my 1. If I can make 2 + 2 = 5, I can get 1. Because you both got what you wanted, I'll get the 1. But most people try to do business at somebody else's expense. Whereas actually you can do business in a way that appreciates for every stakeholder involved. And that doesn't get taught or thought about very often.
Whenever I look at your business models, it's almost like everything you touch turns to gold, but I'm sure that's not true.
Definitely
right?
not true.
So I know, but one of the things you do is as soon as you get a thing you're going to do, you're like all hands on deck. You do it very rapidly.
We move quick.
What is one of the best lessons that you've learned over the last couple of years that maybe something you got wrong, for example, or a lesson that came to you to go, oh shit, I always thought A, but actually it's B, or anything like that surprised you over the last couple of years?
I think what I'm most surprised about is how long it takes you to learn from past mistakes. Certainly in my experiences, I'm really good at saying this time it's going to be different. I'm really good at like just being this hopeful, optimistic, like this time's going to be different. I hear you, bro. Yeah. And there are a number of ventures that we launch into to be like, we got momentum, wind's going to be at our back, this is the direction of travel going to be. Like, these people are great, they're easy to be able to work with, like this is going to be easy, and then it never is. And everything's slower, everything's harder, everything's more challenging. In the same way that people say to you, like, if you're going to take on a renovation project, it's going to take about twice as long as you thought it was and cost about 3 times more than you thought it would. That's the lesson I need to learn when diving into every new venture that we have. Like, it's going to take 2 to 3 times as long as that you thought it would to be able to get there. You're going to work 3 to 5 times harder at this to get this bird in the sky, and it's probably going to reward about half as much as you thought it was. Do you still want to do it?
Yeah. And it's going to cost more than you thought it would as well.
Correct.
Right.
So all of those factors are bigger. And like, what I'd encourage anybody listening into our conversation right now that is naive and ignorant, those are superpowers. Like, the fact that you don't know how hard something is a gift. The fact that you don't know 2/3 of the obstacles that you might need to overcome on something you're looking to try and achieve in your life.
Yeah.
It's magic. The risk of experience is it slows you down because you're like, dang, that's going to be really freaking hard. And then it still ends up being harder. And the mistake I have is I keep trying to tell myself sometimes, like, I can be that rookie. I can have the benefit of naivety and experience that I had when I was in my 20s. And I just don't have the capacity or energy for it in the same way. So instead of me being like, oh, I'm going to climb over that, I can do it, I've got whatever it takes, my inside voice is like, you freaking idiot, Phil. Why did you say yes to this when you actually knew what this was going to mean? And that you're putting yourself under the pressure of being able to fail to deliver on something because you didn't have enough bandwidth to be able to apply yourself to it properly.
I have a more physical example of that. So I did the Dublin Marathon in the year 2000 when I was 22. And I'm doing the New York Marathon this year in November. And when I started out training, I'm like, well, I've done a marathon before, it'll be fine. This is like a totally different ballgame, bro. This is like doing a marathon in your 40s it's like I'm a different person. It's like I've never done it. Yeah.
But you're a different thinker as well. And I think we look at the physical attributes of how a body changes between being a 20-year-old and a 40-year-old. But you don't think about how the maturity and evolution and what happens with the way that you can consider thought.
Yes.
Because even you're thinking around this marathon, like, if it's getting hard at mile 11, what does your inner voice say to you at mile 11 as a 40-something-year-old versus what would your inner voice say to you as a 20-year-old?
Well, first of all, it says, you're an idiot, I can't believe you're doing this. But then it's a lot. I mean, my mental game has always been my best part. But yeah, it really does. It's interesting the way you put that, because I think you have a different philosophy over things the more wise you get. Mm-hmm. But like, sometimes that wisdom, you still have those foibles whereby, like, to your point, you're more optimistic. Yeah. Like, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I'll run a marathon. You're thinking to yourself, oh, this is a great idea. It'll work this time. This is the time it'll work. Yeah. Why is it that you think we do that? Why do we keep falling into that trap in certain areas of our life?
I do believe that if you are to win in life, whatever winning means to you, you do need to be a bit of a dreamer. You do have to allow yourself to step into some utopian thoughts sometimes. You do have to imagine new possibilities. And my friend Dr. Robin Hanley Defoe has proven through science that hope is a strategy. Like, it is something that can help. And that optimism is actually more helpful over a sustained period of time than it's been hurtful. It doesn't mean, though, it's always helpful. Mm-hmm. It's just helpful more often than it's not. So I think that the reason we keep doing this is because it's the reason we've been able to do anything that's made us successful, is because we put a crazy idea out there and then we've gone and done it. We've stretched a belief to say that I think that some version of new is possible, and we've got enough pieces of evidence to say that it's been true. Somewhere like some of the time, somewhere like more of the time, somewhere like most of the time. Like there's been enough truth to say that when I do blank, sometimes it works out. So we keep doing it.
When you first started your career, one of the things you had to be very good at the beginning, and I'm talking when you first started selling your lunch to kids in school all the way up through, you had to be great at handling rejection. What has changed in terms of your mindset? Not just rejection, but handling adversity, handling massive change, handling personal personal challenges in your life when friendships end, relationships end, grief. Like, what mindset have you cultivated or worked on? How do you think about challenges when they happen to you?
Well, let's take the simple rejection piece. Firstly, I've learned that they're very rarely saying no to you. They're actually saying no to it. That detachment is very, very helpful. And then with a insertion of hope that they're probably not even saying no to it, they're saying no to it right now, means that this might change at some point in time in the future. So the fact that I can just, like it's Teflon.
Sure.
It just like slides straight off. I think with the bigger challenges like grief and struggle and challenge and anxiety and family difficulties and losing people and, bad things happening, and I've learned to just expect it. And therefore it's not a surprise. Like a good doctor that is taking you through a surgery is going to say to you at some point, it's like this might hurt a little. And then when they do a thing and it doesn't hurt that bad, you're like, the one that bad? But if they didn't say this might hurt a little, and they just sneak attacked you and put a needle in your arm, there's a strong possibility you'd be like, what are you doing? This is a surprise. It's a shock. I don't like it. It drives anxiety and fear comes in. But the fear dissipates when the expectation has been created ahead of time. So that's how you deal with tough things, is don't be surprised by them.
When you said that, one of the things that I kept thinking about is, this is a question I've asked a few different people, and I want to ask you it as well. There's this notion of the expectation effect, right? I'm obviously, my main area of focus is beliefs and why we believe what we believe and how that helps us. So on the one hand, and I agree with you, so I would take the same perspective as you in terms of when you expect something based on contrast, whatever happens is not as bad, therefore you actually feel good about it. You're setting a different default for yourself. But then there's also the whole positive thinking, which has its own place, which is, on the one hand, you're optimistic. So I imagine this goes well.
Yep.
The way I conceptualize it is lower your expectations about the world and raise your expectations about yourself.
Right.
How do you see it? Like, how do you see the difference between, on the one hand, we need to be positive, but on the other hand, we need to expect the worst? Like, we have to expect the best and expect the worst. How do you decide when to do each?
Well, it's that think less of others and better of yourself, right? That can play with that expectation. Is we're in control of more things than we think we are. And there was a period of time in my life where I was going through a tremendous set of challenges. Finances were really stretched. Long-term relationship had broken down to nothing. Business partner had ran off with some money, and I was stretched and hustling and trying to keep all the wheels on. And on the face of it, the business was looking great from the outside, but the inside was like close to burnout. And I was coming back from a training, and this may be like 2009, 2010, and started to have almost like a anxiety panic attack in my chest. I was driving in the UK and driving back from a late night networking event where I was hustling to try and sell tickets for my next event. And I needed to pull over because one or two things was going to happen. Is either I was going to fall asleep or I was going to just freak out. So I pulled in to a motorway service station in the UK, like a 24-hour motorway service station. And I walked into the the cafeteria area, grabbed myself a coffee, thought that might perk me up. And what came to me was a poem that just entered into my head, and I pulled out my journal and I wrote it out word for word at that given point. It came like a divine download. And I borrowed Rudyard Kipling's title, The Word If.
If, yeah.
And I wrote myself a series of stanzas or words or lines, etc. And it was really a conversation with myself. That's what the poem is. And I have later gone on to be able to make it on a hidden page on my website. So if anybody ever came to philmjones.com/poem, they can read it if they so be defined to do so. But I finished that poem with the words that success is all my fault. And it was really a defining moment in my life to just take full personal responsibility to say that anything and everything that happens is down to me. So if it's good, I had a part to play in it. If it's bad, I had a part to play in it. If it's not working out, I can probably control more than I can control as to what I'm telling myself about it. If it's good, there are still only parts that I can control because there are other parts that are in control of others. It's this whole acceptance piece that hit me like a train. And what it became was empowering. It said, well, hold on, there are 1,000 things I can control here that if I put time, effort, and energy into those and stop worrying about all the other things that are going on in my life, then chances are I can change it. If I pour time, effort, and energy into all the things I can't change, then all I'm going to become is foolish. So I've tried to carry that same belief into everything else. It's not good or bad, it's both. But what I do tell myself regularly is I have a proven track record of dealing with hard things. What I do tell myself is if somebody else can do it, can somebody else be me? Now that's a question. And that allows you to have a little self-audit. And then sometimes what I tell myself is, if not me, then who? And then that means that if I don't have a better who, by process of deductions, it must be me that takes responsibility for whatever needs to happen next. And that's how I think about these things. It's both empowering and exhausting.
That's gold. I mean, if anyone has just listened in on the last couple of minutes of that answer, there's so much value in just seeing the way in which you're thinking. So I love that. Thank you very, very much for that, Phil. One more question, which is a bit more selfish, and then we're going to finish with a quick fire round. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
Obviously, we're both from Europe. You're from the UK. I'm from Ireland. And it's a totally different ballgame over here, to say the least. From your perspective, having built such a business in the UK and then moving over whenever it was, 2016, 20?
Yeah, like 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. It's like a gradual
thing. What are some of the most important pieces of wisdom that you would say, both in terms of how America is different, but also like, I'd be looking at this, I'd be looking at this, I'd be looking at this?
I think there's a few things. One is, what got you here won't get you there. Like, this is a different animal. It's a different beast. There are just different mechanics to it all. And one of the biggest things that's different is the mindset of the people that you're in the business of supporting. And if this is a podcast about beliefs, is your audience is completely different. One of the best examples I can give is, have you ever sat with a group of friends from the UK and watched your favorite American comedian?
Yeah.
And that same group of people are there going like, this is stupid. This is wrong. This is not funny.
Yeah.
And then rinse, repeat the other way around is like, hey, buddies here in the US, I'm going to introduce you to my favorite British comedian. And like, you put Peter Kay on and they're like, what is this disaster? And it's because the belief systems of two different groups of people are quite foreign. And if you're looking to do it, be prepared to understand that you have to meet your audience where it's at, not try and change it to think more the way that you think. That requires reps. That requires actually humbling yourself a little and saying that what made you a 10 out of 10 in a different audience does not translate to a 10 out of 10 when you go work towards a new audience. So view it with the rookie mode. View it with the, I'm going to come back in and learn the business, and be humble enough to suck. Be humble enough to go put yourself back into rookie type experiences that you wouldn't have done in, the big fish in small pond. Enjoy being the small fish in the bigger pond. So that would be kind of learn the business, understand what makes it different. The fast pass comes from making friends that are already doing the thing that you want to be doing. That's the one and only cheat code. Is if you want to accelerate success into a new market, surround yourself with people who've been there and done it and are still doing it, and find a way to be able to get close enough towards those people that they give you their wisdom in bite-sized chunks, often over dinner and drinks and cocktails and in walks between things. And if that means you have to carry somebody's bag, if that means that what you choose to do is to travel to somebody's event, or when then they're in your city, you host them, you pick them up from the airport, you take them for dinner, you find a way of being able to accelerate wisdom from the wisdom of others, then do it. What else would I look to be able to do is I'd write yourself a new business plan. Like you're going to the bank, pitching this business, or on Shark's Tank, Dragon's Den, whatever it might be to you, that you are saying, this is the new version of me on a new day one, and see if you can sell it to yourself like you'd put your own time, money, effort, energy in to the thing that you think you're creating. And that little exercise there right now might help you see around some of the corners. Because one of the biggest things that's often missing when you enter into a new market is your reputation is not what it once was. Because you're in a new arena, a new field of play. And think of it this way, is if you are a rock star, a literal rock star that fills arenas in Romania, and you just decide to pick up your bags and move to America, you're not a rock star anymore.
Yeah.
So you got to do it again.
Sure.
And you can do it again.
Yeah.
But that's the job. You've got to do it again.
What's interesting is, from a practice point of view, let's imagine you're a coach and you get to a stage where you're a high-level coach. You've got a lot of experience. You've done it. You've not done it all, but you've done it. But the translation here is starting again, but mainly from a marketing perspective and sales perspective and relationship perspective.
From all of it.
Right.
From all of it. And, I'm a giant fan of the TV series Ted Lasso. Like, there are so many of my beliefs that just overlap into that show. I think it's a masterpiece, and particularly as now being a British American or somebody who lives in America that's got a British background, etc. Like, all of those overlaps are so joyful for me to plug into. And obviously, same beliefs around curiosity, same beliefs around questioning, etc. that are echoed through that show. And the point that I'm looking to make there is, for Ted to be successful in that TV series, he could use all of the same coaching techniques that he'd utilized as a parent, as a friend, coaching Little League, coaching American football, and taking care of people. All those skills were translatable. But they didn't become translatable until he understood the field of play. And that's the challenge that is too big of a list for most people. They think that their resume can just slide them in through the side door. It can't. You go back to square one again, because you have to learn the field of play. And the field of play is very different.
Everything you're saying makes sense. One of the challenges with it is articulating in a confident way about your, inverted commas, value proposition.
Correct.
As a coach, as a consultant, as a speaker. Mm-hmm. And in America, it's a different ball game than it is not only in the UK, but also in Ireland, but also in Europe in general. There's a form of, let's say, hyperbole.
Yeah.
Or how have you navigated that yourself from, like, humility is a much more important feature, let's say, in Europe than it is perceived over here when it comes, not that it's not important, but it's the way we talk about ourselves is different in the States.
Well, it's different. It's represented in different ways. And the lesson comes from it isn't that humility is any more or less important in any different culture. It isn't that gravitas and credibility is any more or different, or education is any different in different cultures. It's just demonstrated in different ways. That's the part you have to understand. Back to the metaphor around humor. Like, we all love to laugh, but there are different things that we find funny in different cultures. It's not like those people don't like comedy. It's their comedy is different. In the same way that we look at it from the food point of view. Like, American Chinese food and British Chinese food and Chinese Chinese food are all different things. And then people ask questions, do you like Chinese food?
Sure.
And let's bring it back full circle to the whole political piece. A question I get asked a lot, particularly from people back in the UK, is they say, so what's it like in America? I'm like, how does one answer that question? There's so much diverse thought, so much diverse culture, so many diverse differences of opinion. And if we're talking about how do you break out of the UK to the US from a business point of view, it's the same thing that we have to think about when it comes to breaking out your beliefs that are here when the field of play changes. See, you might be able to convince everybody around the Thanksgiving table that your belief is the right belief. But that's only on that very small field of play. If the field of play becomes the entire United States of America, how you're going to have to articulate those beliefs means you're going to have to understand the field of play. And I think this is one of the number one reasons why people remain in conflict in this country, is because not enough people understand the actual field of play that we're looking to win on. They don't have that same shared North Star. And there are a lot of benefits that can come from people not actually having that same shared North Star. But the puzzle is that most people do not understand the complete field of play on every side. And what we do is we surround ourselves with people who believe the same as us. And then we think and further reinforce our beliefs, because we've got confirmation bias from the field of play that is not the field of play, it's the dugout.
Great. That's bringing together pretty much everything we talked about. I could, you know exactly how to do that. Quickfire round.
Let's go.
Favorite movie?
Favorite movie, I'm torn between Top Gun and Rocky.
Favorite musician?
Ed Sheeran.
Favorite artist?
Favorite artist would be Mr. Brainwash.
Favorite philosopher?
Favorite philosopher. I'm going to mention somebody that probably many wouldn't deem as a philosopher as such, but I'm going to have to say Shakespeare.
Favorite TV show?
Let's go with Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso, good stuff. Favorite book?
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Favorite author?
Roald Dahl.
If you could travel anywhere in time, where would you travel? Past, present, or future?
I'll stick with today.
If you could live anywhere besides where you live, where would you live?
If I could live anywhere, where would I live? Singapore.
If you could do anything besides what you do, what would you do?
I'd be an architect.
If you would one lesson for the world that you could put on the billboard that you could share with the rest of the world, that is one core message, what would it be?
The worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the moment where you're saying it.
Phil M. Jones, where can people learn more about you?
PhilMJones.com, exactlywhattosay.com. If you want to continue the conversation, share something that you agree with or disagree with in the conversation I've had with Owen today, then I'm at PhilMJonesUK on Instagram. Plus, you should be able to find me on LinkedIn if you enunciate the fact that I have M as my middle initial and don't try to find me in the sea of Phil Joneses.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Phil. Always a pleasure, mate. Great.
My pleasure. Look at this table. Look at that. We got a stretch in here as well.
There you go. Thanks, mate. Thanks very much, everyone. Take care. Be well. I'm sure you agree with me. This is a phenomenal conversation. For now, I'll talk to you soon. And as always, may the force be with you.